Oh boy, oh boy. Good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to High Top Sports. We got ourselves a fantastic show. The SEC expanding to 9 conference games. It's about damn time. Starting next year, not this year, of course, but next year, which is going to be a quick turnaround. Florida has 3 people scheduled in 2028, or 4, I believe, that they're going to have to cut. A lot of SEC teams have their future schedules that are going to have to make some adjustments. We got ISU versus KSU happening this weekend. Dan Mullen making his debut out in Vegas. What can we expect? What are we excited for? And QB's just getting absolutely paid. Going to be a jam-packed show, and to wrap it all up, we're going to be taking a look, our very first look at the Pigskin Power Ranking, our very own computer rankings, what it got wrong, what it got right, maybe some things that it did well on that we, the fans, may be overlooking or underlooking. We're going to break all that today. Cody, the professor, joins us here live at 8:25. Cody, how you doing, big guy?
Pretty good. Can't complain. Got some new gear, so hopefully it all works out. That's the trial run.
Well, hell of a day to do a trial run for sure. Got the new audio set up, got the new filter, looking good, feeling good, boys. But look, let's dive right into it. Let's get after it. First order of business. These QBs, man, we've heard about their payday, but an article dropped from Pete Nakos on On3 breaking down what they're making a little bit more, right? A more intel on how much they are actually making. The big one that caught me was Dylan Raiola from Nebraska, bringing in a whopping $3 million. Carson Beck is at 3 to 3.2, which is interesting because we heard 4 originally, then it like ripped up to 6. You kind of just see how these numbers fly around. Bryce Underwood, the Michigan true freshman quarterback. What do you think that number is, Cody?
5 million, 4 million,
3 million.
Well, Dylan Pavia got 2 million.
Avery Johnson's 2. John Mateer 2.5. Drew Allard 3.5. 3. Darren Manish, the Duke's quarterback, 4 million. Money is flying around this league, boys and girls. And when you look, here's the one pro that I think will come from this is there's no reason to go pro as fast. So now we might get a full slate of these guys. We might get 4 years of Dylan Raiola. We might get 4 years of DJ Lagway. Now, some guys have different, obviously, needs and wants of their career. But the biggest thing before, the reason you wanted to jet out of there, especially if you're going to be a first rounder, right? That's obviously changes some things. Anthony Richardson's a prime example of that. I'm going to go get this $30 million guaranteed. I'm not making that here in Gainesville, Florida. I can tell you that, especially where he was during his time, it wasn't common. And he was projected to go top 5 draft pick. So unless you're expected to go the first 5 picks, maybe even the first 10 picks, right? And you could argue the first 30 picks if you want, 32 picks. But I would say if you're not in that top 10 echelon for a quarterback, I could see you hanging around for a little bit. Which, look, that is a good thing, in my opinion, for college football.
Yeah, I gotta agree. The whole thing with Anthony Richardson, he knew that there was a program like the Colts that would take him and pay him that lump sum of money. I think his agent and his team did an extremely good job and filling out and feeder out on what the NFL was thinking about him, because he could have been one of those guys that slid. It probably would have been a better opportunity for him if he actually did slide to like a Kansas City or a Minnesota or something. But listen, he made generational wealth money, so good for him. I do like that some of these players are kind of making. I mean, I know it's a lot. 5 million's a lot of money, but it's not crazy. It's not like a quarterback's making like 25 mil, right? They're making less than the head coach. I'm okay with it. And I think that it just shows you how tight knit this SEC quarterback group, or this quarterback group, isn't in general. When you got Dylan Pavia making 2 million and you have Avery Johnson making 2 million or 3 million, the tier of quarterback is pretty tight this year.
What do you think DJ makes? They got it listed here.
They have it listed. I think DJ probably makes 3.5 million.
Over 1.6.
So he's making less than Pavia.
Less than Pavia, less than Brendan Sorsby from Cincinnati, who's expected to make 1.7. Josh Hoover, 1.75. Lenoris, 1.8. Avery Johnson, Diego, John Mateer. These are all quarterbacks listed ahead of him. Now, What we don't see, right, is the brand deals, the NIL opportunities, which more leans towards his agent more so, I would believe, because it even says here that Carson's incentives can max out to around $6 million. So maybe that comes into play for passing yards, touchdowns, playoff, ACC championship, those type of metrics that will adjust that. But kind of crazy to think if that number is accurate. I would like to know exactly where that is coming from, because I also know that DJ's agent has done a great job, I would say, for a lot of his clients of keeping what his agents are making and keeping it under the say-how. Julian Sand from Ohio State's 1.5. Nico is at 1.2 alongside Joey Aguilar, which is kind of hilarious. It says Tennessee quarterback Joey and UCLA quarterback are both in the $1.2 million range, which is hilarious when you think about things. And we're actually going to kind of talk about that later on the show when we get into the power rankings, because it had put Tennessee fairly high. And a lot of you, it was very interesting to see the reaction to the power ranking we posted on our social medias, Instagram, X, all those things. And people hated it, right, as any list there is, but some people actually appreciated it more than other lists. And I liked it because it took the human factor out of it. It was simply just using data. But my point of it at Tennessee, this pay situation makes a little more sense when you break things out a little bit.
Can I just say this, though? What other quarterback has done, one, a Gatorade commercial, and two, a T-Mobile commercial? There's only one that I can think of.
Yeah, I think it's rhymes with DJ.
Yeah, DJ Lagway.
And I'm hearing more big ones to come. That's all I can say about that one. But he also had the Beats deal with all the headphones. I saw John Mateer had one of those as well, too. I would imagine a lot of the Beats probably did a good job with getting those around and handing that out. So kudos to them. But really interesting stuff to see how this all plays out. Again, I think that the money thing at this point, we were all kind of immune to it. But I wanted to find a way of like, look, there could be a positive light. The positive these kids are getting paid, I'm cool with it. I've never felt that as negative, but people sometimes get frustrated and irritated when they see these numbers. But I think there could be some like something like an Avery Johnson, right? I would love to see him play for 4 years. That's I think what we're missing in college football is just kind of that year over year to build that connection with the team a little bit deeper like we did back in the day. And with the accessibility that we have with social media, with these collectives, giving you extra content than you ever had, you're able to learn about them a little bit more. I mean, it's also breaks your heart more too when they go to LSU and in Georgia and play for your opponents. But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there. Let's get into it, man. Let's get into these games this weekend. A full-on breakdown for KSU and ISU and the Dan Mullen one, which is going to be an exciting one. I'm pumped to talk about this one. I'll let you kind of kick us off here with this Dan Mullen preview. Expected to play two quarterbacks. Alex Orji from Michigan, and then your gunslinger here, who you were kind of telling me you think he could run away with it. Let's hear it.
Yeah, I think they're gonna probably use Orji first, get the run game established, and then they'll sub in the other guy. How do you pronounce his last name? It's quite difficult.
Colin Andre, Anthony Colin Andre. We'll go with that.
Colin Andre. Anthony C. We'll call him Anthony C. so we don't butcher his name continuously. But a very mobile guy, kind of that Avery Johnson build. And you start spreading it out with that Dan Mullen offense and the guy that can run around. I would say he's definitely more of a accurate passer than what AR and Emory Jones was, but probably as athletic as Emory Jones. Definitely can roll out. He can make plays with his feet. Always looking downfield for the deep crossing route. He's a pretty darn good quarterback. I know that he had some interception issues. That's when you're a young guy and you're trying to make plays. That happens. He had 10 interceptions, I believe, last year. Same with Avery Johnson. We'll get into him in a little bit, but it wasn't necessarily that he had 10 interceptions. It was the interceptions were really bad timing interceptions too. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, and look, I mean, for Anthony, he had 2,100 yards passing, 13 touchdowns, 11 interceptions last year at Virginia. Orji, as we know, didn't have too much success at Michigan, didn't throw the ball too often either. It was as if he couldn't throw the ball down, make a forward pass. It was a big deal when Michigan finally did make a pass. And I wonder if obviously he grew up in that era him being Dan Mullen at Florida grew up or at least coached alongside that Leak/Tebow-esque type of offense. And I think at UNLV, he's going to have a lot of opportunities to get away with some things. We took a look at a schedule today, and this is why a lot of people have UNLV rolling on into the playoffs and being that last little outside of the Power 4 conference team to get in there. Boise and UCLA are going to be their two big stoppage. Boise's ranked 25th, but it's this Mountain West Conference usually kind of tosses it back and forth between a couple of schools. UNLV is been up there as always. UNLV did a lot of great things in the transfer portal, going out and getting a new receiving core, and Ricky White, Jacob DeSuze, and Corey Thompson. Those guys are gone, but JoJo Earl from TCU and Alabama, Troy Amaral from Arizona State, we know how their offense was, Dejon Reynolds from Pittsburgh, Coy Moore from Western Kentucky, and Tayshawn Lyons from Utah. So a much revamped group for this UNLV team. I expect to do some incredible things on offense. Defensively, that was my question mark, right? How are they going to handle it? Because we know the defense that Dan Mullen brought to Florida, it was not the prettiest thing. Offensively, they always had it clicking, but defensively, it was just atrocious. It was not the Florida way, if you will, and you can get away with that a little bit in the Mountain West. But let's talk about the DC, Cody. He's not going short on it. He's not going to get himself an Alex Grinch. He went and got himself a certified killer on that defensive side of the ball, and I think UNLV is going to be a legitimate threat because, like I said, outside of Boise, maybe a Colorado State, they have the ability to sling it at times. And UCLA, who's been the reason why I say UCLA has been a very well-known commodity when it comes to defense. And by adding Nico to that, again, I don't think Nico is just this massive shining toy, but it could allow for a UCLA team to do some things. But if he takes down UCLA in week 3, him being Dan Mullen and UNLV, I believe they will be ranked after that week. But let's talk about this DC for UNLV and why they're more of a threat than we realize.
Yeah, so he is a Mike Zimmer prodigy. Mike Zimmer, head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. He also dates all the way back to working with Deion Sanders back in the day at Dallas. He's been around the block. His scheme is kind of an old school, heavy double A gap blitz. He had 4 continuous years with the Viking where they were top 5 defenses. I'm not necessarily saying that this defensive coordinator is going to be able to do that. That's very tough. But he did have some success. He was a middle of the pack NFL DC, and that's extremely hard to just even be middle of the pack. Especially with the 2 teams that he was with. He was with the Raiders under Gruden. They weren't great on defense, but it wasn't necessarily because of the defensive coordinators, the talent that they had on the field.
And when you think of the Raiders, I would think defense is what kept them in a lot of their football games, to be quite honest with you.
They weren't scoring on no points under Gruden. We know that for a fact.
Yeah.
And then obviously Cincinnati before Joey B. And so that team has just been a rotating deal of coaches in there. So I'm not going to take the Cincinnati against him. And then he went to the Minnesota Vikings, learned under Brian Flores, another highly touted defensive coordinator when you think about that nasty defense he had in Miami, and then now at the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
This guy is, like you said, he's not a Grantham or a Speed D Grinch. I mean, he's the real deal. And he's been in the NFL a very long time. So he's taking a step back down to the college program. And I think that he can really, really excel at the college level.
And there's some few guys that have come from that Bengals tree. Robert Livingston, the DC at Colorado, was someone else that came from that Cincinnati tree. And he's done some great things over there. So necessarily wasn't, I don't think, a Bengals situation, because I think pre-Joey B, that was probably their strong suit as well, was their defense. They just didn't have an offense to complement that at times. But yeah, man, look, I think Dan Mullen is in the perfect scenario. We talked about it a few weeks ago, I think about a week and a half ago, because you thought he was going to USC. But I really think he fits the mold here at UNLV. He's got a direct path to the playoffs, which is all he really cares about, and doing great things there. And we've talked with Allie before, who is close with Dan, and it talked about who he is as a coach. And if NIL was just 2 years earlier, we'd probably still have Dan as a head coach at Florida, at the University of Florida, just because I think of his ability to adapt and to adjust. There's things that he doesn't like to necessarily do, whether it's recruiting or attacking certain things, and the portal allows him to fix his holes, to fix the things that he's not sharp at. And so at Florida, you couldn't have any holes. You couldn't have any weaknesses for too long, or they get exposed pretty quickly. Mississippi State, he could get by because the expectations were much lower. I think at UNLV, although the expectations aren't there, he's walking in playing. It's like a middle schooler playing first grade kickball. It's not going to be fair, I don't believe, to anybody else that's going to be going up against him. Just especially because he can go in there and pick and prod who he wants to add to this team. He's not competing in the same level. The guys he's brought into defense, think about this: linebacker Marshall McDuffie had 46 tackles last year. Safety Cody DeCambra, and they're only returning starters. Transfers, though, former 5-star Denver Harris and LaTerrence Welch at corner. Linebackers Bryce Edmondson from Memphis and Kamula Kahaya from Arizona. They all joined McDuffie. And then lineman Chief Borders. That's the Florida Gator we were talking about from Pitt. Jalen Lee from LSU and Colin Fuller. Borders played at Florida Boys before he went to Pitt. From Coastal Carolina. So a complete overhaul on that front seven that I would assume also is going to complement the new DC coming in as well. So, look, a lot of things I'm looking forward to is one, how are they going to manage this quarterback battle? I wouldn't even say battle. I would say kumbaya with these two quarterbacks. And then how does this defense really sink their teeth in and dominate? I've got them covering the 26.5. That's what I picked them for yesterday. How do you feel about that?
Listen, Dan Mullen's going to score points. I mean, Dan Mullen could score points with me out there. You look at the games that he lost, and it wasn't necessarily because he couldn't score points. It was because the defense couldn't get a stop. They couldn't stop a nosebleed. Yeah. If he would have fired Todd Grantham, he probably would have retained his job a year earlier and got a pretty good DC. Listen, it's not easy to get a DC in there and get the right pieces. Look how long it's taken Billy Napier. I mean, we're on DC number 3, and it has steadily gone up, but it's taken 3 years to go find a guy. So it's one of those things where it's tough. And these guys, they move around so much. A good DC, you get a hot name, he's hot for a while, and then he jumps teams. Look at the Penn State defensive coordinator moved around, and so it's very interesting. They're always getting plucked to the NFL, but I'm going to tell you this: Dan Mullen can dial it up. I think that, and they had a pretty good offense last year. I think they can. I think he's going to come in there and he's going to put up 35 on everybody, and the defense is just going to need 2 stops, and that's all it's going to be. That's going to be the game.
Bohannon, if anything's going to happen, he's going to go to Utah in a few years. I could see that. I could see that transition and him having success in that Big 12. Again, somebody said it. He's not going to have success in that big-time school. I just don't think that he has. And maybe he will. Maybe he'll find his way back. He gives me like a Brian Kelly, Lane Kiffin kind of vibe, where he just he's goofy, right? And he kind of just, I mean, they all are. All head coaches are goofy in their own way, but Brian Kelly just marches to the beat of his own drum. But then how they manage the roster is very Lane Kiffin-esque, like with the firepower offense, just needs to be able to kind of move willy-nilly through the transfer portal. That's what Dan Mullen needs to do. And so maybe he finds some success here. I'm excited to see how this thing plays up. Let's keep rolling, boys and girls, as we go into this ISU versus KSU matchup tomorrow. Really excited, man. Hell of a matchup for week 1. We had Georgia Tech versus FSU, which was the first game last year, which it didn't have the same excitement as this one does because it wasn't two ranked teams, but it ended up being a phenomenal game, as we know. But you said it last week. This is a possible Big 12 matchup, and we talked about it last night with Bozeman. Although ISU loses 2 of their top producing wide receivers who both went for over 1,000 yards, they just reloaded back in the transfer portal, and you're bringing in a third-year starter and Rocco Bett, who threw for 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. We talked about how if DJ Lagway throws those exact numbers, even a little less, Florida's a serious contender headed into things. So just think about Iowa State, who had a phenomenal defense last year with Rocco Media. There's a reason they went 10-2 last year, a team that was right on the cusp of making the Big 12. The Big 12 really flipped on its head and did not go the way people thought it would. You had 5 teams, I think, fighting for it at the end. They bring back the running back, but wide receiver transfers Chase Sau and Xavier Townsend. Sal had 600 plus receiving yards at Eastern Carolina. So you're lose a 1,000-yard guy, bring in a 600 plus yard guy from Eastern Carolina, averaging 20 yards a catch. And then Townsend from UCF had 521 receiving yards. And we know how that UCF offense was. They didn't throw the football. It was KJ Jefferson and RJ Harvey. That was the UCF offense. So for the fact that he catched over 500 yards from a linebacker, very impressive. So they didn't, lose much. But again, they are having to replace Jaden Higgins, who had 1,800 yards, and Jalen Noel, who you were high on. You were a big Jalen Noel guy in the NFL draft for ISU. Now, we move over to K-State, who I'm a huge fan of, and Avery Johnson. I love Avery Johnson and what he's able to do. This game came down to the wire last year between the two of them. If Kansas State could have protected the ball and handled things a little bit better, they probably would have pulled away. This became an ultimate chess match last year. Avery Johnson threw for 2,700 yards. I want to say he was out for a game or two early on in the season with a shoulder injury, if I'm not mistaken. So those numbers aren't truly, the yardage doesn't really match up for what he produced, and still threw for 25 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, but also 605 yards on the ground. That's where the difference maker, I believe, is going to be for Avery Johnson against the Iowa State team, who struggled against the run game last year. They bring back Dylan Edwards. Dylan Edwards is an absolute cheat code. From way of Colorado 2 years ago, loved watching Dylan at Colorado. Played for KSU last year and his sophomore, him going into his junior year. So you've got a very experienced seniority team in this Kansas State team with a much more experienced Avery Johnson. Again, Avery Johnson is the guy who kicked Will Howard out to Ohio State. Like, that's what this kid, and we're talking Will Howard, national champion, that first round draft pick, but still NFL draft pick. They returned some of their big flashy wide receivers and Jace Brown and Jaron Tibbs. Jaron Tibbs is a Purdue transfer who's 6'2", and when talking about him, Avery Johnson says, "Look, just his mere size make things a lot easier for me." So I think they did a great job of providing more weapons for Avery. They rebolstered the line as well, which I think is going to be helpful. I like KSU by a lot, but Iowa State isn't going to be one to sleep over at all. I think it's going to be a rock fight.
I think Kansas State's the more complete team. I mean, they had a top 15 offense last year. They had a top 50 with some actual leading stats in defensive passing yards and stuff like that on defense. I just think they're a very complete team. Listen, the Achilles heel with Avery Johnson is, it's not the 10 interceptions. It's when those 10 interceptions come. They're always critical late in the game on a drive that they have to have. We think about that game last year that you were just excluding to. I think he had 2 picks or 3 picks in that game alone. You know, he's a guy that can go out and score 5 touchdowns a game, and then the next week he'll throw 3 picks. That's my only knock on.
Was this the
Avery
game? I remember us talking about it on our recap show where I think the game was lost in the first 5 minutes. I think he turned it over. Remember, it was like 31-5 or 7 within the first quarter because it went fumble, interception, fumble, and then it kind of found itself. But the game was already over. He put himself in such a hole that it didn't matter because not only did he turn it over, but it was where they turned it over. I remember this game vividly now.
That was one of them, and then the championship game, he had a couple. I think it was like going like in the fourth quarter. He had a big INT during a big game, and it's always seems to be his Achilles heel. Now the kid's a junior, right? He's like a redshirt junior or a junior. I'm going to say this. There's plenty of room for growth there. And 10 INTs and 25 touchdowns is not a terrible ratio. And he was, like you said, with the shoulder injury, he was sidelined. He's probably 4 or 5 INT or 4 or 5 more touchdowns. I mean, you're talking 30 touchdowns. If he gets 30, 35 touchdowns this year and 3 more picks, I'll take that all day long. 35 touchdowns, 13 INTs. The problem is when does he throw those picks, and can he go out there and forget the picks? That's the biggest thing that Avery Johnson needs to figure out, because it seems like those picks come in bunches. It's not just one a game. It's 1, 2, 3. Now you're out of the game, and now it's like, oh well, it's on to next week. That's the one thing that I have to see Avery Johnson take the next step. Everything around him, I'm good with. Kansas State, very solid team. It seems like every single year they are ranked in the top 25, around that, anywhere from 20th to the 15th range. I think they just have a very solid program. ISU, I think that they definitely can score with Kansas State. I just think Kansas State defense is just a little bit too much for that ISU defense.
So they didn't play. He didn't play in the conference championship. Him being neither team played in the conference championship. It was ASU and
it was a rivalry
BYU.
game then.
And BYU. It was the ISU game, but he didn't throw any interceptions. So it was actually the BYU game I was thinking of, where he threw 2 picks and then had a fumble as well, I believe, because they lost 38-9 in that game. Yeah, they got absolutely dog walked by BYU. Then they lose to Arizona State, who was a good football team, but again, threw 2 picks against Arizona State, lost by 10. Threw 2 picks against Houston, lost by 6. So it lost to 7 against ISU, but it was his lowest completion game with a 42% completion, where he averaged almost 60 for the year. So I think KSU lives and die by Avery Johnson mistakes. Go ahead.
I think it was the Arizona State game that I was thinking of, because they were at that time, that was a pretty good matchup there.
Yeah. No, it was a good matchup. Yeah, it was right at the end. It was a deciding factor of who would play.
That's what it was.
In the Big 12 championship.
And he I remember it was Brett Favre-esque, okay? He threw, I remember the pick. Crossbody
24 for 40. 24 for 40.
Crossbody into traffic, and I think the nickel corner picked it off, and you just saw it. Like, you cannot do that. You can listen, I know the kid's talented and got an amazing arm, but you cannot go back against the grain, crossbody into traffic, and that's exactly what he did, and that was it. That was the nail in the coffin, and if he can take a step in the right direction and get that cleaned up, boy, watch out. Avery Johnson's going to be a very good, fun football team to watch.
Big fan of Avery Johnson. Again, somebody I would love to see stay, getting paid $2 million at KSU. Probably could see him play for one more year, and I think it would be a good for college football if we did get him. He got hurt against Colorado. I do remember him getting walloped. But I guess he toughed it out. I do remember him not being out very long. I just couldn't remember how it all played out. A couple of super chats here really quick. Let's see what they've got to say, and then we'll keep it rocking and rolling here. Mr. Rick James says, the Villages is the next IMG. Mark my words. Is that an up-and-coming school? I haven't heard about the Villages. And then best dang show when the Gators win. I come here live, and the passion is just like my living room. Go an insane asylum. Go Gators. Absolutely. Look, we're looking forward to that, man. We're looking forward to having some insane asylums. Who is your pick, though, Cody? We've got you're saying KSU is a more favorite team. They're favored by -3. I like KSU a lot here too. But look, the biggest thing too, what we got to realize, boys, is Rocco obviously did a lot of great things last year, but almost 70% of their offense was with their 2 wide receivers that are in the NFL. So a lot of production, very similar to ASU and Cam Scatabo, who I think made up 65% of their offense, and very similar to Boise State with what's his name? Running back. Raiders. Ashton Genty made up 98% basically of that offense. So a lot of these teams had some anomalies that are going to have to get addressed. And look, here's the big thing, and this is what makes it so exciting going into this year, is that teams you could usually maybe see to take a step back a little bit, or how you're going to see some guys need to step up, which they are still seeing, that they're able to replace it a much more smoother transition. Again, going to get a guy that had over 600 yards at East Carolina and a guy that had 500 yards at UCF, they may be able to fill the shoes. Maybe they give you 800-900 yards receiving, right? That would be enough if other areas also improve. And that's what you want as well for an ISU football team. So a game that came down to the wire going out to Dublin. I see it going down to the wire again, but Avery Johnson, a more experienced back. Him, in a way, going to not be a third-year starter, but a very experienced back as well. Last year was his first kind of take of the ropes. Even though he was a sophomore, it was because Will Howard was the guy the year prior to that. So that was his first run at it. Those mistakes were common. He did make a lot of mistakes, but grew up very fast, as a lot of these quarterbacks are having to as well. And I think that he'll make some massive strides this year. Really excited to see him play. Before we dive into the SEC moving to 9 games, which I love, and then the Pigskin Power Rankings, let's give a quick shout out to our sponsorship, Odds Jams. Boy. Every month, betting on sports completely risk-free. The secret? They're using Odds Jam. Odds Jam isn't just another betting app. is turning the entire system in your favor. And here's how. OddsJam uses a strategy called arbitrage, finding odds discrepancy across a sports book. You bet both sides, and no matter the outcome, you will profit. Here's an example. If you bet $500 on Boise State to win on FanDuel and $335 on their opponent San Francisco on DraftKings, you're guaranteed to make $50 win or lose. It's that simple. With OddsJam's mobile app, you'll get real-time alerts on these opportunities every day. People are making thousands of dollars every month, and to get you started, use the code HIGHTOP for 35% off and a 7-day free trial. I guarantee you'll profit during the trial, and if you don't, cancel with one click, no questions asked. Don't leave money on the table. Go to oddsjam.com now, use the code HIGHTOP, and start making money the smart way. Yes, sir, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to smash the like button, subscribe. Almost 200 strong in here. Appreciate you guys joining us this evening for our High Top College Game Day. Again, we'll be having a show every Thursday live at 8:25 and our Monday mashup live-ish at 9:25. So tune in for that if you guys want to get all things college football. Well, some great news happened today. Something that it was not a matter of if it will happen, but when it will happen. It is finally locked and loaded. The SEC is going to implement a 9-game conference schedule starting in 2026, which goes into next year. After this comes after the drama from the Big 12 and the Big 10 really point the finger of like, you guys got to lock it in. What are we doing? We're doing it. Why aren't you doing it? I've been clamoring for it. Why not do it? Just give us more good football. I think other conferences are going to wish they didn't push for this because the rich going to get richer. You're going to just make us all play one another. They have forcing them, though, one of the three non-conference games have to be a Power 4 team. Meaning, Florida plays Florida State, Georgia plays Georgia Tech. I think there's a few others that have those outer conference. Clemson, South Carolina. Thank you. That have those outer conference rivals that you're never going to get rid of those. So it's like, we can't get rid of these. We're not going to go get 3 cupcakes. You got to find someone who you got to play. I don't care who it is. Now, a little bit of a cheat code, but that's just kind of the name of the game. Because look, Georgia has Georgia Tech, and outside of these last 2 years, Georgia Tech hasn't been anything. But to each their own, it's still a Power 4 football team. So they only have 2 cupcakes on the schedule, which Florida, in a way, has had that for the last 3 years now. We've already been on that path as far as I'm concerned. It's not going to really make a difference for Florida of having to amplify or amplitude their schedule. Here are what the rules are. We'll continue with the single standings, non-divisional structure. That's great for me. Each school will play 3 annual opponents focused on maintaining many traditional rivalries. This was a huge conversation when the 9 was to come into play, or who would be Florida's 3 locks for the SEC. For me, it's pretty simple, I feel like. It's got to be Tennessee, Georgia, and then LSU, probably, to maintain some of that rivalry. South Carolina was one that I liked. If you want to get a cupcake one with, you know what I mean? But I like keeping things in order, and I love playing LSU every single year. I love playing Georgia and Tennessee. Everyone else can rotate as far as I'm concerned. If we skip a year of Kentucky, whatever, that would be the only one I feel like that we're used to playing every year that may get lost in the sauce. But outside of that, South Carolina was one that I felt like we played it for every year. That one's kind of changed. And I would love to move on from Texas A&M and get a dose of Oklahoma, get a dose of Auburn, and get back into it. So I think it's great for all of the SEC. Each team's remaining 6 games will rotate among the remaining conference schools. So like I just said, and then each team will face every other SEC program at least once every 2 years, and every opponent home and away in 4 years. So we're definitely going to play Auburn, which we haven't played them in 5 or 6 years or something like that. And it's been a while. So we haven't played Bama in a while, too. I don't remember the last time we played Bama. So we're going to get them every couple of years, too. So should be fun.
Yeah, I really like it. I think it's the move. Truthfully, there's so many good venues in the SEC that I would like to experience and the team would like to experience that we don't get to experience. Auburn, Alabama, South Carolina again, even though I got to watch that game on mute because that freaking rooster crowing and cockle-doodle-doing the entire time pumped right into the audio. It's
Oklahoma,
terrible.
That's going to be, that's a new one.
Yeah, that's going to be a great competition between us two, we've only played a couple times, and I think we're 1-1, right? They beat the brakes off us in a bowl game, and then we beat them for a natty. So, there's a little built-in rivalry there. I would love that. And I think it's good. I think it's what college football in the SEC definitely needs. And I like that they're keeping those traditional games no matter what. I do really like that, because with all this rapid change in college football, we need some semblance of the old school way. And there's nothing better than Bama Auburn, or Florida Georgia, Florida Tennessee, Florida LSU, just to name a few, some great games. I don't care if we play Kentucky every year. I don't even feel like I feel like that's an easy dub anyway. So why not rotate and go play Oklahoma instead, and go see their venue? I think it's great.
So, in all kinds of weather, they posted predicting each SEC team's future permanent football opponents. And for Florida, they had Auburn, Georgia, Kentucky, which is interesting. For Alabama, it's Auburn, LSU, Tennessee. For Arkansas, for Auburn, it's Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. Hell of a permanent schedule. Could you imagine for Auburn, Alabama, Florida, Georgia being your permanent schedule? By golly. Arkansas is LSU, A&M, and Texas. Let me see what Texas is. Texas is Oklahoma, A&M, and Arkansas. I'm okay with that. I think two great rivalry games between the Battle of Texas and Oklahoma, throw in whatever. Tennessee is an absolute joke. Alabama, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt. And so is South Carolina. They're Georgia, Kentucky, Vanderbilt.
I don't see that happening.
Someone's got to get Vandy.
I mean, yeah, the Tennessee Vandy game's gonna happen, right?
It has to happen. Yeah, you got to rotate that Kentucky game with like. See, I think Tennessee and Florida have to be lock. I would trade. Auburn and Florida is not. I don't want that to be a consistency. Well, I don't care, but what's that?
Who wrote it?
In all kinds of weather. So I think it's a bit off on a few teams. I do know that Tennessee, Alabama, Vandy, Kentucky one is a pretty close one, because I know when Saban was still in play, that was his argument, that I think this was the proposed like possible rotation, and he looked at it because Alabama's is Auburn, LSU, and Tennessee. I mean, that's a hell of a stretch for them too. So they're like, well, we've got to play these three guys every year, and Tennessee gets Vandy and Kentucky.
What's Texas's?
Oklahoma, A&M, and Arkansas.
I mean, that probably sounds as close as it's probably what it's going to get.
That one's fine with me. That one's realistic. I think Oklahoma is Texas, Mississippi State, and Mizzou. I don't mind that one. Oklahoma and Mizzou have a weird rivalry. Like that's a weird. I'm fine with them arguing every single year. Someone's got to play Mississippi State. Look, that's just the way the kind of cookie crumbles. The Auburn Florida one is the only one that I'm kind of like about, because Tennessee has to be in there.
I have to agree.
You can't get rid of Tennessee. Like
there's too many iconic games.
Yeah, you cannot get rid of Kentucky. If you want to make, look, I don't even care. Keep Auburn, Georgia, and get rid of Kentucky. Give us Tennessee. Do not, by any circumstance, ever get rid of that game. Like the perfect three, in my opinion, it's LSU, Georgia, Tennessee. I don't care how hard it is. That's what I want. Give it to me as a Florida fan. Figure out the rest of these for these losers, for these bums. I want that year in and year out.
So with the out-of-conference games, what are you thinking? One Powder Puff and then Florida State and Miami?
No, I don't think Miami would be in there. I think it would just be Florida State and two Powder Puffs. It would be like what it is this year.
I really like that Miami matchup.
I do too. I just don't, especially with this, I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening anymore.
I just think there's something about the three power programs in Florida going up against each other to fight it out to see who the king of Florida is. And
I don't disagree. I like playing every 4 years. It makes the rivalry a little bit. It creates some excitement behind it. And it's not me being afraid to play them every year. I don't care. Don't mind. But I think it creates it puts more pressure on the 2 years, right? Of like you got to either split it or win both of them because of what it does for the next couple of years for you. Clint keeps telling me about college pick'ems. We did the bowl games last year. Can we set this? Do you know how to set this thing up? I think it's a great idea. We should definitely do this.
College pick'ems?
Yeah. You look lost. We'll move on. We'll talk about it after.
Yeah.
Just don't forget. I mean, I feel like I just told you. I just asked you to solve Morse code, and you just like completely broke.
Yeah,
on it.
I didn't do college pick'ems last year.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I asked you to breathe out of your nose. Let me. What are we doing here? What's going on here? Oh, that was weird. All right, let's read another super chat here. $20 from Mr. Rick James. My man says, Baby J, my cousin, number 0. Look out for his little bro at Mercer. He got lost in the sauce. Hybrid player from the Mullen era and injury prone. Marion County is huge. MIA condensed. Watch out for Ocala. New Mexico High School. Go Gators. That's not New Mexico High School, is it? Well, shout out to your cousin, man. I appreciate the $20, Rick. Start reading it. I love it. Go Gators, baby. Absolutely. Thank you, my man, for the support. All right, boys, let's talk about this here. We got a few more minutes before Cody's got to rip. It is the very first Pigskin Power Rankings brought to you by High Top Sports. Now, I want to make sure this is very clear. This is a computer-generated model, okay? This is not humans involved with this. This is the computer taking on data, recruiting class, PFF ratings, everything you can think of to put together the best top 25. And why I like it is because there is no human factor to think like, well, what about the Nico situation? What about this situation? What about that situation? What about the BYU quarterback situation? A lot of moving pieces here that we all are aware of, and the computer is aware of, but still feels like, hey, these teams are going to be able to overcome some of these things. Some of you liked it. Some of you felt other teams were overrated. And I got to agree. I think that it was a nice, healthy dose. To me, it didn't feel homerish. Where some of these lists we see come out, you could feel people putting names up there because they feel like they need to. But let's get into it. I think a few teams that kind of we can go over that have people kind of questioning would be Mizzou is probably higher than what people expect. Auburn, Tennessee is a lot higher than a lot of people think they should be. ASU. I want to address the Auburn elephant in the room real quick because what I like about Auburn is on paper, they are one hell of a football team. They have an opportunity to do some scary things. So I know it seems crazy, but they have an opportunity to go get things done if Jackson Arnold can just be somewhat good and Hugh Freeze and pull his head out of his you-know-what. But on paper, this team is a very talented football team. I know you got to go, so give us your thoughts really quickly, and then I'll let you rip, and the chat and I will discuss this power ranking.
I got till 9:15, so you got me till then. I think that Auburn is should actually probably be up just a little bit with the talent on that team. Like I said, though, they have got to figure it out, or I said it last week. Hugh Freeze is going to be the first Power 4 coach out of the job. What kind of shocked me was the Indiana being so high at 15. I think that they lost quite a bit. They played a pretty weak schedule. I think that it's going to be tough for them to be 15. And then the other one that I was kind of questioning was Tennessee. We kind of talked about on the phone. Yes, I understand that they have Nico, and Nico did not do a whole lot last year. I mean, they rode on the back of Dylan Sampson in that defense, but I don't know that they have a running back like that. And they don't really recruit running backs like that. Like, that is kind of an anomaly for them to have a bell cow back like that. And I just don't see it this year. And they lost quite a bit on the defense. I just think that team is probably out of the top 25. I just don't think they're a ranked team. I think that the power T up there just gives you a lot of notoriety, and it automatically, even in the computer model, kind of pumps them up a little bit.
Deshaun Bishop is going to be the running back this year who averaged 6.1 to carry, which isn't anything to slouch on. But look, this is why I know that Tennessee at first seems a little bit overwhelming and probably alarmingly too high. But we spoke about at the beginning of the show with the quarterbacks and how much they were getting paid. Joey Aguilar and Nico are valued the same according to NIL evaluations. So if you go look at the film, it wasn't like Nico was saving lives. And Tennessee has been pretty healthy the last couple of years, and it wasn't because of Nico. I think Josh Heupel's done a pretty good job of recruiting. They finished with top higher end classes in a Tennessee expectation. I think Josh does a great job of coaching a good defense and then giving it just a very controlled offense that doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And so if you're able to still maintain that, this team isn't a poor football team. A lot of talent is at Tennessee. They have David Standards, one of the top offensive tackles going there. They've recruited great lines year over year for the last couple of years now, have gotten some big-time recruits. So on paper, they actually look pretty fantastic. Boo Carter is another talented guy that they're going to have probably playing both sides of the ball this year. We'll see how that plays out, but played secondary last year. So it isn't like they're just some slouch of a football team. Again, Nico is a shiny toy that everybody was kind of at all when he left. And I was kind of low on them, but you got to think, man, this team didn't really have that much adjustment. So it seems crazy at first, but again, I kind of respect the computer's pick on this one. Mizzou is that one's for me. I feel like they shouldn't be up there. I feel like they lost a lot of talent. I don't feel like they've recruited it well in Mizzou standards, but not in the standard to be this high. I think they should be a lot lower than where they should be. Georgia Tech is another one that I think probably should be up on this list. That is not. There's another team that I saw today that I was like, I agree, that is missing, that should be up there as well, but I can't think of who it is. I think South Carolina, LSU, some people thought A&M was too high, but again, when you take a look at that roster, this was a team that was one game away from being in the SEC championship. You bring a lot of those guys back. Mike Elko does some fantastic things, very great defensive mind. If Marcel Reed is able to kind of find himself, this team can be dangerous just like it was last year. Arizona State, I think that's probably a wild card. There's not a lot known there because of 60% of their offense and Cam Scatterbo has left, but still has a pretty good football team. A lot of it was retained heading into this season as well. I don't mind Indiana being there. That's a playoff team. You're all of a sudden you're not a Kurt Singetti guy anymore. You're losing sleep on old Kurt. So I like him up there. I'm huge on SMU. I think honestly, all in all, it's a very well put together list from what we have. And I kind of hope that it gets obliterated a little bit from week one with the games that we have. We will see a little obliteration. But ultimately, again, I think that from what we have on paper, and this is why Florida's at 14. Keep this in mind. This isn't me. There's zero bias in this. And this is what people get mad about Florida. That's how impressive Florida on paper looks and what they are bringing to the table. An 8-5 team is sitting at 14 to this computer model because of what it has on paper. And we talked about it. LSU they're very similar. They have similar holes, but they're very similar.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are not believing the ASU because they lost Cam Scabo, but they are getting back their number one wide receiver in Tyson, and that kid is he's an NFL day one draft pick. That kid is absolutely electric. Got banged up last year. My only thing with Tennessee, again, they lost a lot of weapons on offense. Also, the wide receiver room is very banged up already. I'm just not bullish. I would sell the stock. I would sell it. I would get out of it.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you.
This could be one of the worst Tennessee teams that we've seen in a long time. And it's not because of the names on the roster. Keep
in mind the quarterback isn't taking into consideration boot noise. So I hear you. There's a little bit, that's a factor. Michigan, in my opinion, is in a perfect spot. I think a lot of people have Michigan way too high. I think the Bryce Underwood hype has got it a little bit carried away. But look, I think Tennessee, I think it's still too high. But I kind of saw where the computer, why it was, again, if you look at it on paper, it's still a pretty sound football team. I think South Carolina's a little too low, to be quite honest with you. I think South Carolina brings back a lot, and that kind of tells us maybe we're buying into some guys a little bit more than we should be. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's where this is kind of cool. It's kind of testing the brakes a little bit. But I love this. I think it creates great conversation like it is. It creates a different perspective of it. Like, people were trying to come at me about, like someone said, hey, you have Florida losing 5 games. Like, first of all, I didn't put this together. Second of all, I don't know how we got this to them losing 5 games, because it's a ranking before we play the football games. But all in all, I was kind of pumped to see that this was a thing we created outside of anybody else's noise, and it's similar to other people with a few different nuances. And I like the different nuances. It creates great conversation. We'll update it not after this week. There's not going to be ever game played, but the following week. And I'm really excited to see week over week how this thing all shapes up and how it shapes up and ranks up to the Big 12 or the 12-team playoff.
Just think we're one full Saturday week away from this list getting shook up, because it will get shaken up. There is a school out there that will pay a program that has no reason to be hanging around, that is going to walk up and sucker punch them. It happens every single year. I can't wait for it. Last year it was at Northern Illinois in the Fighting Irish game. I cannot wait for it. Football is back. It's just a little touch and a little wink before the bedroom is this weekend, and then next weekend is all access, no kids in the house, and you know what I mean.
Auburn plays Baylor week 1. That could be that first team that gets knocked off the wagon pretty quickly. I don't think there's two other teams that will get shaken up week 1 and knocked off this list completely, but Auburn is definitely in the mix for that one. Boys and girls, hope you guys enjoyed this show today. Great show as always. A lot of great conversations. Be sure to smash the like button, subscribe. That's the Prof. I'm Shelton. Until next time, boys. Peace of love, baby. We have one last super chat that I missed. 1 second. Rick James, $5. North Marion, Freddie Swain, Citra, Ocala Marion, Rashad, and Kev Hop. Stain Tool. My man Rick, thank you for the super chat tonight, man. I appreciate you.